Welcome to the Meta One Coin Report, exploring the world of private digital currency through the eyes of human rights and empowerment for humanity. Here's your host, Leanne Carroll.
Today's show tells a very interesting, true, and personal story. I'm excited to have this conversation. What happens to truth tellers when they don't go along with the narrative, whether they realize it or not? What happens when you cast your vote in a voting booth? Is your vote counted? Is it manipulated? Do public servants really serve constituents once they're in office? Are individuals who are said to be in public office selected rather than elected? Today's guest is Jim Price from the JimPriceShow.com. He tells his story and shares his perspective of the definition of freedom, human rights, defamation, and liberties the corrupt system will take to destroy an individual who speaks the truth. The type of activity that Jim describes in this episode occurs across the board and is not unique to Jim. Individuals who speak the truth across many genres receive the type of treatment Jim describes in this episode. It's important to tell the story and let it be heard. If it can happen to Jim, it can happen to you. There's a solution to empower yourself. It's universal law. We discuss this and more. Please join me in welcoming Jim Price to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We were talking about freedom and the abuses of power and who the power structure is, that kind of thing. And your story came to mind. And I thought, this is a really good platform to tell your story. And you're all about freedom. You're all about bravery when it comes to freedom. And you have an extraordinary story. And I would love for you to share that and go back as far as you can when the story started and where we are today.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that introduction and actually having me in mind for the story that about freedom. Sometimes you feel like you're kind of out there spinning your wheels through life and you don't realize that other people are paying attention. So for me, I was a kid who grew up on government cheese. I saw I got the white boxes of powdered milk, the white paper boxes says government U.S. surplus. And I grew up in those kind of neighborhoods and around those kind of people and never thought of anything other than that's just kind of how the world was. And as I began to evolve and knowledge and different things in my life happened and I saw different things going on, I realized that freedom was really important. And not just in the idea of the word itself, but real freedom. Freedom to think and understand, and not freedom like, oh, I get to be an attack helicopter day. That's not freedom. That's just kind of lunacy in itself. It's the idea of what real freedom is. And so the more you really spend time thinking about those things, and then you see where there's times in your life where that can be taken away or pushed around, and you start saying, well, that's not fair. And then, well, it's not up to you whether it's fair or not. And so then you start questioning, well, why isn't it fair? And so that started me asking questions that really most people couldn't answer. And I remember back in high school, I was asking the question about what's this Corporation of America thing? Why is Washington, D.C. not part of America? Why is it a separate corporate headquarters? Well, that's just the way government works. It's just paperwork. Don't worry about it. And so it made me wonder, like, okay, so what are they hiding? What is the real truth behind these things? And so as time went on, I went to the service. I was an F-16 maintenance specialist, crew chief, and I was hurt and was given an honorable discharge, and went on and started a family. Just like you're supposed to, right? And next thing you know, I'm working 3 jobs and I had a stay-at-home wife and got 4 kids, and things are going great and success. And buying my first house and moving along, and there was some things here and there, little hiccups here and there, and they weren't big things, but that you just see where sometimes someone's opinion or someone's choice of words or a decision that has nothing to do with what's fair suddenly changes things for you. Suddenly you're having to do things differently. And so for me, I really didn't have any legal troubles or issues like that. But then as I got older, I started thinking about, well, why not just run for office? And then that what they always say, that it's always about the small guy going in there and making the big difference. And so as I went along, I got older, I saw those things seemed to be more important, but I always understood that freedoms, and not just freedom, but liberty. See, there's freedom, Now, the freedom means that you can run around in this little square all you want. But liberty is the choice to go outside of that square, is the choice to go find your happiness, your passion, what drives you, what makes you better, what makes you enhance your God-given talents, the talent that God gave you, whatever that is, playing the saxophone, digging ditches, driving a tractor, whatever. There's a talent that you have. It's amazing inside of you. It's something that you'll be so successful that other people will be in awe of what you do. But too many times we're distracted by other things. But liberty is an amazing thing, and it's such a concept that we don't even practice today. We always think of freedom first. So as I went along, and I'm gonna just jump. I started way back, but I'm gonna jump up through my life here. And about 6 years ago, well, 7 years ago, I decided I'm gonna run for House. I mean, it was a completely spent $120 on filing fee. Had no idea what I was doing. I lost the primary. Didn't spend any money. And I had no idea. I didn't even know what ethics violations were or financial reports or any of that. I just ran for office and I didn't do anything. I just didn't make it any further the primary. So I almost called that was kind of like I didn't even try. Well, someone came up to me in early 2016 and said, "Hey, there's a Senate seat coming up. The gentleman's in there is going to run for county commission, and I think you'd be great for it." I'm like, "Well, yeah, why not? Let's do it." And so I got a treasurer and all this other stuff, and I didn't think anything about it, and I put my heart into it. I really did. I was like, and I went to these meetings. I said, the Constitution is all we need. And man, you think about talking about taking the sucking the air right out of the room. People didn't like, what do you mean the Constitution's all you need? Like, wow, crazy. And says, individual liberties, individual freedoms, that's who I am. That's what I believe in. I say individual freedoms, individual liberties supersede anything the government wants or needs. And we need to think of it that way first, that the Constitution limits the government, never limits the person. And again, it was just people just, kind of looking at you like you're speaking in a foreign language. And so it's sad to think of that there were these people who were older than me, more political than I was, all these things. And I'm having an education situation with them. I'm educating them on their own Constitution. And so things went on, and all of a sudden I lost my security clearance. Like, what was that about? Like, well, I got to find something else to do. And I just couldn't seem to find anything else to do. I had a very high level security clearance above top secret, working for the DOD as a private contractor. And then all of a sudden I started having some issues with some of my social clubs and some other things. And things just I kept having this bad luck. Come home, my front door was open. Come home, lights were on. Things were moved in the house, but nothing was stolen. Started thinking I was going a little crazy after a while. I was like, what is going on here? So then I put up security cameras in the house. And like I've done it for military forever. And so I started putting up my own system. And it was just kind of weird that things just kept happening. It was this weird effect in my life. And I don't know how else to put that, except I started to feel like I was losing my mind. But I'm still going through the campaign process, doing all the parades and doing all the door knocking and all these things and finding great response. The fact that I want a small government. I want to limit government. I want to start at the state level, push the federal government out of the states. Don't accept that federal money. Don't accept all the criteria that goes along with it. And I want to just see us, wedge down government and get it out of the individual lives, because we don't need to be telling people what jumpsuit to wear every day. And I would say that, and people are like, "Oh, that's yeah, we don't need the government." Why don't other people talk that way? I said, I don't know. So as things go along, I lose the election. I lose it by 7.5%. And I'm like, you know what? I don't understand that. I know I was more popular than that guy. I never saw him campaigning. He wasn't really even at the events. He wasn't doing the debates. He never debated me personally. How does this guy just get in there? And I just kicking rocks, God, what happened? What did I do? And then I still couldn't get a job. And then it just seemed like no matter, every time I'd get a job offer. And they pulled the job offer last minute. Oh, cool, I got this job. I'm going to start work. Bam, the job offer's gone. I'm like, man, what am I, toxic? Like, what's the deal here? And as time went on, we were going along, and all of a sudden, I go and I started doing some other things, and I saw I'm gonna go in and run again for a house in another 2-year cycle. And this is about another year and a half later. And still trying to get things back together, things that seemed like they were working. I'm paraphrasing some of this, skipping ahead. And I had coffee like I always did with the Starbucks down the street, which I don't drink Starbucks anymore because there's just too many ties there that I just can't agree with anymore. So I've chose not to be that their patron. I vote with my money. And so I go and I go down and have coffee, and the judge is there, and one of the psychologist, the retired school psychologist is there, and this lawyer guy's there, and just the usual guys, the older guys. We sit there and we drink our coffee, and then for an hour or so and go about our way. And I go on home, and get home. I'm home about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and there's SWAT team running up in my front yard, and they got riot shields and helmets and face guards, and their guns are drawn over their shields, and they're running at the house. And here comes the battering ram. And the door was actually, I was reaching for the door. The door was unlocked, and I just was going to go pull it open, and blam, they blow open the door. Trim flies off, got the gun, got the red dot on my forehead telling me to freeze. I'm not going to go anywhere. And I spent 6 hours in my driveway, handcuffed in a car, being interrogated, asked over and over again, who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? And after a while, you start to see the pattern. You start to see things start to come together. And you see these things happening. And you're like, why does this person keep asking me about this? Well, as one brother to another, you can tell me. Well, if anybody knows anything about that type of brotherhood, is that it's a secret. You keep one secret to another. You don't break that bond. And I just said, what you found in the house is mine. It belongs to me. Well, are you sure this doesn't belong to your kid? Because, come on now, tell us this belongs to your kid, right? And again, I'm paraphrasing a little bit of the conversation, but the idea is that basically they were wanting to pressure my kid and get my kid tied up. And then I realized that after a little bit of thinking that this was about me. I said, you know what, that stuff's mine. Oh, okay. All right, cool. Let's get this wrapped up then. And all of a sudden everything was over. So I get taken downtown and processed. And 3 days later, they drop all the charges. Oh, that was weird. What was that about? So go on a little further, and I end up having some stuff I was taking care of at the VA, and some medical issues, this and that. And then I was going to run for House again, but I was having these medical issues. I dropped out of the race, and I didn't participate. And so then I kept talking about this, and I kept pushing back on this. And then the next thing you know, there's another no-knock warrant on my house. Now, I want to tell you about the judge that was having coffee with that morning. He's the one that signed the first no-knock warrant. So I had coffee with the guy the morning he signed the no-knock warrant on my house. And so they have this second no-knock warrant. They come in, and then shortly thereafter, I wasn't home at that time, but they beat my door in, the whole 9 yards. Did not mess with anybody else's stuff except for mine. Nobody else in the whole house. Nobody else's rooms were affected except for mine. Things that belonged to me were the only things that were destroyed. And I'm just like, what's the deal? Why am I having this? Why is this going on? And 3 days later, they come by, they pick me up. And I'm really confused by what's going on here. Like, why is this happening? Why is this going on? And then about a week or so later, a U.S. Marshal contacts me, says, Jim, listen, you're not having bad luck. They're doing this to you on purpose. I'm like, well, first of all, who are you? And why are you contacting me? And why should I trust you? And I'm kind of being really standoffish, like, okay, it's like a telemarketer. I'm not telling you, if I need car insurance or not, or extended warranty. And I'm like, hey, what? And he's like, well, I know about this, I know about that. And he starts naming off all these things. He goes, you didn't lose your security clearance because of anything you did. You lost your security clearance because they wanted to destroy you. They wanted to, make you lose your credibility. And I'm like, who, what are we talking about? Well, when I was going through the election, the first 2016 election, when I ran for Senate, who a gentleman then became lieutenant governor of the state of Kansas, a gentleman came up to me at an event and he says, you know what, the people who make the decisions, who wins and loses, they don't want you to win. And you might as well stop now. I'm like, go pound sand, man, buddy. I'll do what I want. I'm running for office. And then a little while later at a different event, someone came up to me and says, you know, your phone's tapped. I'm like, go through it. There's nothing on my phone that's fantastic. You can look at it all you want. And this U.S. Marshal goes, you know, yeah, those guys that were telling you those things when they told you that the parties that be that want to win, you know, don't want you to win, and or that make decisions who wins and loses. They don't want you to win. That's why they came after you. That's why they ran the newspaper articles about you. They've paid a gentleman a large sums of cash to write certain hit pieces. That same guy pays off certain people in the records department and gets the file for the judge's notes and other things like that. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? What? And you know, yeah, we need to talk. There's more. And so over the last 2.5 years, I have probably talked to that person at least once a day, sometimes several times a day. And they have done a lot of things to help me psychologically understand that they were touching my house. They were coming in, they were manipulating things, they were doing things. The reason I was losing these opportunities, job opportunities, is because they would find out who I had applied with. They knew that they were intercepting the email that I would get the job offer. And then they would contact the HR department and tell them some crazy story that I'm stringing up kids in the bathroom or in the bathtub or something and executing children, or some weird story, right? Something I didn't know. I don't know what they ever told them, but they were basically telling them that I was a very bad person. And so I could never get a job. And so they were eliminating my income. They eliminated my security clearances. They eliminated my reputation. They were taking away my social groups. And it was just a chipping away, and chipping away. And what had happened was, as I was told, that I put me through a litmus test to see whether I was willing to do the pay to play, if I was going to be a part of the cool kids club, if I was going to be a part of the establishment, if I was willing to play along. And somewhere along, something I had said, individual liberties, individual freedoms, or I would expose any corruption I found, whatever that was, I said, they were afraid of me. And this is how afraid they were of me. This wasn't just me losing the election, but they needed to get rid of me. And so I read one of the text messages, Jim Price cannot win, take him out. 3 days later was the first no-knock warrant on my house. And they use burner phones and all this other stuff. So they're pretty crafty, but they're pretty lazy at the same time. So my first probable cause statement was actually sealed and redacted by another judge. So one judge signs the no-knock warrant. And then my probable cause statement, which I could not get, was sealed and redacted for an entire year. Could not get it. And they had that sealed and redacted. I had to hire another attorney to go sit in the records department, wait for another judge to unseal and unredact my probable cause statement, because it listed one of the judges that I was having coffee with. So as this whole thing's evolving, and I'm talking with this marshal and he's teaching me these things and what's going on and all these things are being affected, you know, I'm going through a lot of psychological stuff. You know, I sit there and stare at my front window because I've lost a lot of time and I'm worried about the next no-knock warrant. I'm worried about the next raid on my house. They're going to come in the middle of the night. They're going to shoot me in my sleep. I mean, these are the real legitimate fears that I really, really felt. And I had people in my life that I genuinely believe saved me because they were here. If I had done this all by myself, if I had been alone, some of those nights, some of those evenings, some of those weekends when there was no one around because my social groups are taken away, because my job was taken away, because people did not want anything to do with me because of the articles they wrote, I couldn't get work. I couldn't do contracting anywhere. I couldn't change out people's kitchen sink because they were afraid I was some type of drug dealer. And so there was a lot of psychological effect in that. Gaslighting, if people understood what gaslighting really is like, if they've ever felt it, if they've ever lived it, they wouldn't use it so flippantly. And so as I've evolved through all this stuff and watched all these little touches on my life, and I'm kind of giving more of, you know, maybe that 30,000 foot view of a lot of these things, but it was very hard on me. So over the last 5-6 years, I've went through most of my life savings. I've not been able to get a W-2 in 5 years of the last, out of the last 5 years, no W-2s for me. And so I'm doing my best to do this. Well, about 3 years ago, I thought I was going to do a podcast. I was going to say, hey, I'm going to do this podcast. I'm going to talk about, AOC and how dumb she could be and just have fun with it, but being me, who I am, I start digging into facts. And I start talking about facts. I was talking about individual freedoms, individual liberties. We stand with all patriots as a phrase I came up with. We stand with all patriots. It's not a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent thing. It's not a man or woman thing. It's patriots, people of God and country. And so the show started coming out about that, and that started becoming this real cathartic effect of me actually actively talking about how bad the deep state can be, how bad the establishment can be. And I started picking apart how these people were players in these political arenas, and how a lot of these people, these R's and D's, were the same person. They say fancy things, they do it, but they're hiding all the stuff behind them, and they'll never tell you the truth. And so as I go through all these things, and I've been touched by these things, I've lost basically an entire life savings. I was planning on being retired here in a few years. And not that I really had to retire, but I knew I could. If I wanted to just sail out into the sunset, I had 20 years of savings. I was fine. I could live my life and not have to worry about things. And so my problem is that when they start touching you that way, you start realizing you have less and less. They take away your reputation. They take away your income. They take away your family. They threaten your family. They take away your social groups. They take away your ability to move around. There's things that I basically now I can't sell my home. I live in a home that basically I'm almost a prisoner to, because I can't leave it. I got too much equity in it, but I can't sell it either because of the things that they've done to me and my record and things like that, where they've done some little touches here, right? So now I have legal battles with that, but I don't have the money to fight it. Do you see the traps they create? And so when you hear about all these things, this is not about me telling you about, oh, woe is me. This is not about that. I need you to worry about me, but what I want you to do is worry about yourself and worry about the country that you live in that's willing to do that to any one citizen in this country. And when your individual liberties and your individual freedoms have been taken away, but we stand with all patriots, it's not something you exercise. These things are easily taken away here. We're not standing together. We don't bind together as a people. We, the people, have always been the answer. So if you think about our constitutions, all state constitutions are one reciprocal to the other. This federal constitution upholds the state constitution. So we're almost like individual countries. And then we're bound by this bigger ring, this bigger circle, where the federal government was in charge of immigration and national security. And that's it. And so all this education for me is, to me, I would rather tell you the story to tell you how to set yourself free and how your life could be freer, and you have more power and more ability to stand up and give yourself a backbone that you didn't know you had. Because here's a silly part of this. So much of the walls that we believe we live in are built within our own mind. Our Constitution limits the government and it never limits you. And no state law, ordinance, or guideline can supersede the Constitution, but we allow it. We allow that to happen continuously in our lives, and we don't pay attention to it. We don't subscribe to the Constitution that all political power is inherent in the people. It's inherent, meaning it's in the people. That's the only place it comes from. It comes from the people. And that all free governments are founded on this, the people's power. And so my story goes on to say that I ended up having to hire another attorney. I had one attorney that was just leading me to the slaughter, had to hire another attorney. And then that guy at the beginning was a real rah, we're going to get things done. And then he just led me to the slaughter as well. And so as they continue to chip away at things, it's never really about, I always say that politics is running, when you run for politics, it's 1,000 paper cuts to your soul. There's not one knife. There's not one gunshot. There's not pulling of the hair. There's no burning of the skin. It's just these little paper cuts, these little things they do to you over and over and over and over again. And most of it's to effectively get you to quit, to get you to bow out, to push you away. And so there are a lot of many moving parts in my election. The Democrat National Committee ran 12 flyers at $12,000 a piece against me. Well, that's a lot of money for the Democrat National Committee to run against a state senator. But if you look at the idea that the guy who was the lieutenant governor of Kansas, you can see where they were putting him on a trajectory where they wanted him to be, because they knew that they could manipulate these election cycles with the computer touch. And then when you find out that the computer itself has a 15% swing in there, so I didn't lose my election by 15% according to the marshals. I actually won mine by 7.5%. So it's a 15% swing in there. And so when you see that they can do this through electronics, they can do this through the police department and the DA's office. And you can see that the judicial system, the judges are involved in it. And you can see where the judges are having to be, protected and hidden away. But then you look at your state's constitution, and it says there is to be given no immunity by the legislator, and no tribunal shall do the same. When you look at your constitution, it says that in there. Well, then why do judges have immunity? Why do cops have immunity? Why do DAs have immunity? Well, it's because the legislation gave it to them, but in your own state constitution, because you don't know this, it says they cannot give immunity to anybody in any department they're in. So why are we building cages for ourselves? Why did we say that, well, we're going to allow them immunity? We can't. So I started this path of understanding the corporation of America, and that there was liberties and freedoms out there that I knew all along. And a quick testimony about who I am. 2013, my son's graduating from high school, and this is a quick little story. I don't mean to go into, and it's too much personal stuff, even though all this is very personal. The idea that my son says, "Hey, Dad, I want to get a tattoo for my graduation." I'm like, "Oh crap, yeah, what?" Well, my mom said she's going to pay for half. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay, great. What are you going to get? A frog or a set of balloons or a dolphin? Like, what's an 18-year-old kid getting out of high school going to want?" I'm like, "All right, well, I'll call my buddy down here and see if he's got an opening. He'll probably get you in because he's my friend." And I called him up. "Hey, you got an opening?" "Yeah, come on down, Jim. No problem. I'll make sure you got time." Take my son down there, and I'm sitting in the lobby, and I want to be anywhere else on earth right then, because I don't want my son to say he wants a dolphin and I have to tell him no, or pay for something I don't want to be a part of. And then of course my ex-wife was there, so I was really in 7 layers of hell at that point, I guess. Anyway, I was trying to be funny there, but the idea was I'm sitting there and like, oh, I don't want to be here. And I said, my son goes, "Hey, Dad, come look at this." So I walk back, and I'm expecting, like I said, see some, Kool-Aid man or something else, some unicorn. And he has on his, from collarbone to collarbone, in an arc, and these 2-inch letters, it says, "Don't tread on me." And I said, "I'll pay for the whole thing." Because I didn't realize that I had purveyed to my son that there's a lot to be lost out there. And the things that we lose can be affected by little touches of bureaucracy, little touches of people's emotion. People that have a little bit of power and a little bit of money, who think that they're the kings of the earth, can affect your life and take things away from you. And somehow I told my son that in my own life. I never told him those words. I never told him to get that on his body. I never told him that that's the life you lead, son. But through my own example of understanding that life and liberty, those individual freedoms and individual liberties mean more than anything. And so back in 2013, this is way before the election stuff, right? That I had purveyed to him that. And this is an 18-year-old kid who could have, got a rocket ship on his leg or something, but he decided to do this instead. And so to me, I felt like I had done something right. I'd purveyed those things, and it gave me that little bit of a boost to say, you know what, I didn't screw it all up, right? And when the radio show started taking off and all those things, and started getting 10.2 million people on Facebook and YouTube, and all this stuff is really going crazy. I'm monetized, and then as soon as I monetized, as soon as I had the numbers, man, they shadow banned me like nobody's business, right? YouTube went in and cut my numbers off. I figured out they've taken about 2 zeros off of everything right now. Anything that I do or publish, it's like 2 zeros are gone. But guys, this is what it's about. And there are people out there who believe that in their lives that they know so much more, their own selfishness. And I talk about this on my show all the time. I talk about individual freedoms, individual liberties, and then the 10%, that little extra you can do for the world around you. Learn how to be selfless and not so selfish. The more you do for others, the less they have to do for you. So let's make the world a better place. And when I talk about that, I say sin starts with selfishness. And when you start looking inward, that's where you start having depression, because you're thinking inward. You're not thinking outward. Well, woe is me. My hair's not long enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not smart enough. And that's the devil's way, the demon's ways, of whatever you want to call it, that's touching you and saying, you're not it. God didn't come to bless you. The world's out to get you. Don't worry about it. Don't, you need to take care of you, get what you can. But in reality, if you're outside of yourself, God gets to bless you and fill up your cup as full as he wants and the way he wants it done. And if you're thinking outside of yourself, and that's what this whole process has done for me, the touch of the deep state, the establishment, they actually made me stronger in my faith. They made me stronger in understanding to do more for the world around me. I would rather set everybody free. I would rather let everybody be free ahead of me. I would rather teach everybody the path ahead of me, how freedom really works. And I'll come in the very end. I'll get to it when I can, but you guys get out there, be free. Because when they come in and they take all your freedoms away, they take all your liberties away, they take away your ability to choose for your own life, you realize you've got nothing left but your voice. You got nothing left but to do for others, because what do you have left? And so you think outside of yourself. The world around us would be amazing if we weren't selfish. And I again will say that selfishness is the beginning of sin and everything after that. So be outside of yourself consistently, continuously thinking out here. Now, if we read our Constitution or Bill of Rights for any given state, if you just take the time to read, most of them are 20 little mini paragraphs, like most of them are just a sentence long. But read those Bill of Rights. Now, you can continue on to read the Constitution itself, but take the morning, and instead of sitting there flipping through whatever social media app you want to flip through, just go to your Bill of Rights and read that instead of going through whatever app you're going to do, whatever photos you're going to like or not like. But take a time to do that, because then you'll start realizing the cages that you built for yourself, the imaginary things, the imaginary laws, the imaginary reasons you do things. And so this whole thing has taught me a lot. As much as it's destroyed so much what belonged to me and things I had built up for my life and things I had built for my future, it's allowed me to humble myself and realize the more I do for other people, to set people free, to push back out there, to make the world a better place around me. I mean, that's filling up my cup. That's doing things for me that I never thought I could see. And I'm still here today. I'm still able to pay the electricity bill. I'm still able to pay the internet and all the services I have for my website and everything. I'm able to do that. And it still happens because God blesses me in that way, not because I went out and earned it. It's because I let him do it for me. And this world is a hard place. There's a lot of things that are going on, but when we're trying to do more for others, it kind of balances it all out. But the amount of establishment touch in my life, and I still talk to the U.S. Marshal today. In fact, when I wrote the affidavit for the state of Kansas to start the forensic audit, I made the announcement, and 2 days later I had a death threat. So I had to call them up and say, "Hey guys, this is what's going on." What? All right, we'll take care of it. We'll put somebody on your house. But why should I have to live in a world where I have to fear that government? Why should I have to fear the government? Why should I have to look around and fear those people? I should never have to fear them, but I do. But in reality, if I read my state's constitution and any state's constitution, because they're all one reciprocal to the other, I don't have to live in fear ever. But we've allowed the bureaucracy to get so big. We've allowed ourselves to subjugate ourselves to an extension of British law into our country. We've allowed for ourselves to be considered to be a corporation within a corporation. We're an asset to something else, and they're loaning money against us. And when you start realizing how much you're just a nothing to them, you're an asset. That's how little they think of you. They would rather control you. They'd rather manipulate you. They would rather put a mask on you and make themselves feel more holy and more powerful than set you free. Your freedom scares them to death. But they believe they know more. That little bit of power, that little bit of money they hold, they think that they're God. In their little world, they are. But that little touch from this person, this person, this person, and it all adds up to a big touch, right?
It does.
So,
it does. And you were treated exactly like a whistleblower. A lot of people for the pharmaceutical industry, the stars, anyone who has received this type of subjugation, this type of treatment, they're whistleblowers, and they speak the truth, and you're
Right.
treated like a truth speaker.
Right.
A powerful truth speaker. And that's true. Government gets their power from us, and we give it to them. And that's why they have power.
Yeah. Yeah. That word subjugate is is something we should be really understanding the true definition of, what it means to be subjugated. And the thing is we're doing it to ourselves. Though a lot of this isn't. I mean, we imagine more laws than exist. We imagine more cages than exist. And all we got to do is stand up and make those that we have elected our servants, which is they actually have less rights as a servant than we do as a citizen. And we've got that completely backwards. Well, they have immunity. They don't.
And you're actually demonstrating how they really are not elected and they really are not our servants.
Right.
The whole system does not work the way we think it does.
Absolutely.
And you kind of understood that through the courts too. You said something like, we think they're a court of law, but they're actually a court of record.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole nother, again, words have meanings. And symbolism in our country and in our world is actually greater than we really want it to be. Well, that's just a monument. That don't mean nothing. Why is it that there's only 3 obelisks in the world that are in Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican? The Washington Monument, the one, that big spire that sits out there in front of the White House. Why is that there? Why is it situated where it's at? And then why do judges wear black robes into courtrooms? Why is it the British Accredited Register Bar Association? Why do all judges belong to the Bar Association? Why do all lawyers belong to the Bar Association? Why can you not practice law unless you're a part of that? Well, again, you're subjugating yourself to an extension of what was the British authority into America, because they were going to watch over the peasants while we were paying back our loan from 1871. So again, we don't realize the United States corporation has gone bankrupt 3 times since 1913. We don't pay attention to the fiat currency that we went into that's a petroleum dollar, and we don't understand what petroleum dollar really means. We don't understand that we were on a silver-backed dollar for a long time after we were taking off the gold-backed dollar. The court of record is actually, which is what we should be thinking about and talking about. The court of record is actually bound by the Constitution. It's different because that's what the sheriffs and the marshals are. They're sworn under. The problem is the court of administration, the court of law, is an extension of British authority. So in reality, that's not even a part of our country. That's not what we're doing. But the cops have given themselves their authority over. They're given authority through the courts, and the courts are given authority through the cops. When in reality, we should only have sheriffs and marshals. But again, we don't realize how many of these words really have true meanings. And I know some of this, I kind of skate on the top, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's the idea of you have to plant those seeds of knowledge and get people to expand on that. No different than the old universal law program itself. It builds on itself, and it gets you to the point where you realize that all you have to do is just take your freedoms back. The ones that were taken away from you because your parents signed a document that turns you into a corporation, and they didn't know what they were doing because no one explained it to them, because it's just the doctors and the nurses doing it, right? And nobody's doing anything fancy. But then again, why is there a registered number on it? Well, the way they keep track of you. But also remember, most people didn't get birth certificates until they were 17 and 18, 19 years old when they go get a job. Well, in reality, now kids are getting it at birth. That way they can start loaning money against you at birth, and they get that extra 18 years of window of using you as an asset. And you start thinking of it that way, and you start opening your mind to those things, and you realize that the authorities that the court gives to fine you for not wearing a seatbelt in your own vehicle shows you how far they really don't care that you subjugate yourself. They want to make you less and less powerful. They want to keep pushing you down, making you afraid. The idea that there is no such thing as a driver's license, and there's no such thing as actually registration for a vehicle that's not used for commercial use. That's why the commercial driver's license exists, not because we should have private driver's licenses, but they wanted to get you to have an identification. And well, what are you required to show? Well, it's required to show a documentation, but then actually your Constitution says something contrary to that. So again, we don't even know our own Constitution to realize that having these things on readily available documents is not part of freedom or liberty. It's not my job to tell you who I am. It's your job to tell me who you are, because you work for me. And it's your job to assist me. It's not your job to be my authority or tell me how to live my life. So it's a
big unschool movement.
Yeah. It's a mental cramp. The mental cramp of that effect of going, huh? And then too many times we've watched the TV show Cops, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, you work for me. Well, that guy's crazy, but that's actually the truth. The silly part of it is that some guy completely whacked out of his mind on drugs or alcohol or whatever is speaking more truth than the sober ones about the fact that he works for him. The cops, the sheriffs, the marshals, they work for the citizen and they're to assist us. And that we get to do that. We get to, we get to tell them what to do. We really do.
Brings me to a point I wanted to make about the marshal who contacted you, who was working on your behalf. Was he putting himself in jeopardy? Did you have to keep it quiet that you were talking with him?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I didn't find out for a little over a year and a half who actually keyed him off to my case. And it's actually somebody everybody knows. And I actually knew this person, and I didn't realize, I was very honored that they were looking out for me still. But yeah, I was not allowed to speak, and I didn't give his name. And I refer to him now only because basically enough time has passed, but the investigations they were involved in. And here's what the other thing happened too, is that they were literally, as they were touching my life, they were already being investigated about the pay to play, about the money laundering, about the investment company who brings the money in and shifts it back out through trust funds and different things like this. And they were already investigating. But what happened was that I actually broke open the case for them, because what happened was they were so afraid. And I don't get this, and I'm not saying this to be any type of boastful person, but they were terrified of me. And I'm like, why? Because I was going to tell the truth. That's what you got that scared of me. Because I was willing to tell the truth that much, that the truth was going to, that scared you that way. That's what this whole thing was about. It wasn't about that I have some omnipotent power to move rocks with my hands and, and fly around the world. It was just that I was going to tell the truth, and they were so afraid they over pursued. So it wasn't enough that they got rid of the security clearances and that they did the stuff with my not allowing me to get work, but it was the no-knock warrants. It was the quote unquote trash pools with the evidence they supposedly found. It was the doctoring of things. So it was, if they would have doctored the evidence, that'd been one thing, and if nobody would have noticed it, right? Oops, a mistake. Maybe one no-knock warrant was, but when they did 2 no-knock warrants, it creates a pattern, right? And so these are the things where they exposed themselves by over pursuing to try to get rid of me. And when they over pursued, it exposed it all. But by this time, he had already come in, and that the second one happened, and they're like, that's when they felt like it was the person said, hey, you need to go help him out because they're really coming after him. And then he said, by the way, we've already been investigating this and this person. I'm like, and here's the thing, and I feel silly is the word. The day is long that I didn't identify it, but I knew something was wrong with so-and-so and with so-and-so and with so-and-so. But I just thought they were my friend, right? I'm like, well, they're my friend. They would never do that. And I feel foolish, and it hurts my ego that I didn't identify these people as what they were. But when they over pursued me, when they went too far, it really blew open the case for everybody else. So the case has gone. I know that there have been certain people in my situation or in this case and that had touched my life that have turned state's evidence, that are squealing on their buddies, just told them about the whole thing. But the problem is that the damage that's been done in my life, the years, the aging. I mean, I used to look like Tom Cruise, and this is what I look like now. No, I'm just kidding. I've always looked this way, but it ages you. It emotionally and physically ages you, and you lose time when you spend time looking out your front window, literally at night, just staring out, watching the headlight come by because you don't know if that's going to be the next no-knock warrant. You don't know that's going to be the next raid. It does affect you. And so for that guy to step up like he has done and give me the information he has, he's not been able to do the things he should be able to do because, quote unquote, I'm not in part of the investigation, but I'm a victim to the investigation. But at the same time, he's done certain things. He's done certain step-ins where he's had to stop certain personnel from continually touching my life. Internet articles and things like that. The government has tried to take a lot of those down, and they keep popping back up. They'll be down for 2 or 3 hours. The federal government will take them down and they'll come back up. It's amazing how bad these people are wanting this. They were spending thousands and thousands of dollars a month just keeping the articles pumped up. So it's just weird how much effort these people want to put into me. And I guess I should be honored, but at the same time, I just want my life back. I just want to go back to who I was. And I say, here's the thing: I'm not going to go back to who I was. I'm not going to go racing back to that life, because now the guy who's lost everything, I have nothing to lose. And so now that means I have all the power in the world. I want to tell people about freedom. I want to tell people about liberties. I want to tell them about the corruption. And so they learn. And so they know that this is the kind of world they live in, that evil doesn't take the night off. Evil doesn't take the 4th of July or your birthday off. They're always doing evil things. They're always looking around, waiting for you to get weak and then come and attack you. And not that I was doing anything wrong, but they just felt as I was that big of a threat. And so we should be vigilant. We should always be vigilant, thinking about not cynics, don't be, don't do that to yourself, but just pay attention, because there's a lot of signs and I didn't pick up on it. But here's the other thing: normalizing this conversation is what keeps them from doing it again. When we don't talk about this, when we don't talk about the things that have happened, we don't talk about the processes, talk about the evil, then evil gets to do it again and again and again until you expose it.
And there's a certain strength and light that you have. And I think that it was that they could see. You were really getting your message out. People were receiving it.
Mhm.
And you were gaining a lot of traction, which made you a threat.
Yeah.
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 And you still have.
Yeah, that's it. That's the amazing part is, hey, I'm just Jim Price, I'm just me. I'm just telling you about what you could do. And that's power. Think about how great we would be if we were all saying that, and we were all doing that for each other. How much more power is on the other side of that if we're all looking out for each other, right?
And that's what Justin and I were talking about on the last podcast. If we all band together, if we were all strong, if we all knew the freedom within ourselves, within our hearts and our mind, if we knew the truth about our freedom and our liberty, we, in banding together, there's no way. And I think that's one reason why there's so much effort in dividing us, because if we did unite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What's the color of your skin? What's between your legs, or what you do in your bedroom? If you actually think about everything they ever do, that's all they do. It's so simple. Here's the thing, guys. These are not mastermind geniuses sitting in a room thinking of the next most evilest plot. A lot of this is very simple, and we fall for it. We fall for the mousetrap over and over. Oh, there's some cheese. Let's go for it. Oh, it's about my color. It's about what's between my legs, about what I do in my bedroom, and they just keep reverting back, and then they blend to and they move over. That's as simple as it is. And we keep falling for the stupidity things that just don't be that. Understand where the message is coming from. To understand what there's really on behind this. I mean, if I go into, here's what I do with everything from politics to health to social stuff. One thing is a person being selfless in their message? Are they doing this because it's going to make your life better? Or are they trying to scare you or subjugate you or hold you back? So that's usually kind of a litmus test for me. It's like, why are they doing this? Are they leading me to somewhere that's going to set me free? I want you guys to get into this universal law class. I want you guys to understand and learn this and be free. Okay. That's all he wants, me to go be free. All right. I kind of like that idea. But if you think of it in the other way, where they're doing all these other little things to distract us and get us all wound up and freak us out and all these things, then you realize what their real intentions are. And if I can go in as easily and say, okay, well, if you take citrus rinds, lemons, oranges, grapefruits, and you steep them down in your kitchen, you can make quinine. Quinine used to be the majority of what was in tonic water. Tonic water was what we used to use all the time. But in quinine, it's actually an antiviral, antibacterial, and an anti-cancer. It subdues them, so your body builds immunity to them, and then you have it, but you don't ever have it. You build the antibodies. You kill the cancer cells, you kill the bacteria, you kill the viruses. Well, we could make that quinine in our kitchen in a pot and just steep it down, and we take a half a cup and drink that a day. Or boron. Boron gets rid of heavy metals in your body and allows you to get rid of these toxins in your body. Well, borax was a 30 ml team, and people used to take a teaspoon of that, put it in the water, shake it around, swish it down, and they drink it. It's pretty much tasteless. But we don't do that anymore because the government told us, no, you need to do this. You need this medication. You need that. And then you start looking back to the origins of the American Medical Association, which was the, which was the Rockefellers. And then you go back and you find out that the Spanish flu was only named the Spanish flu because Spain was the only one talking about it, not because it came from Mexico or Spain itself. But actually, we find out that the Rockefeller Institute was actually vaccinating Fort Riley soldiers before they went into World War I with meningitis that they had built, meningitis vaccine they had built in horses. And they put this in these soldiers, but then they went over in this wet, damp climate over in Europe, and then it caused other effects where it caused this flu to come out through the meningitis vaccine that these soldiers took over there. And that's why it proliferated through there, and it came out in America and there at kind of the same time. They couldn't figure out what's going on, but we find out it was the Rockefellers, but then they're the ones that, so you go back to the simplest terms of things, and you start realizing that some of the home remedies things we had, some of the things we had that were the simplest were greatest. But then when people go out there and want to play God and mess around with things, that's when things screw up. And you find out it's tied to money, it's tied to power and depopulation. And you're like, so if I can tell you to take boron as a 5 milligram tablet a day, and it gets rid of heavy metals in your body, so you don't have to drink the Borax 30 Mule Team detergent. Okay, we'll do that. If I told you to take Lugol's iodine every day because it resets your thyroid and allows you to kill bacteria and funguses as well in your body and cancer cells, then do that. These are very simple mineral things that you can do to your body. But I can push back on any of the medications they have through simple research. Fluoride is one of the most horrible things and man has ever created, but yet we put it in our water. Oh, there's no fluoride in the water. Well, you're putting a lesser version of fluoride in the water, and you're calling it a pipe cleaner. Why are you putting pipe cleaner in my water? So, then I drink alkaline water. This is alkaline water. I only drink alkaline water, and I got rid of my heartburn and all that other stuff. Just the simple things in our life. If I can push back on their science with alkaline water, with boron, with quinine, with iodine, you start realizing that, I can push back on any of this hysteria, any of this craziness. And I say, okay, now I get to make the decisions about my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And it's God-given. It's inherent in you. It means it's born in you and it's yours, whether you've committed a felony, whether you committed murder, whether you're skinning babies in the bathtub, it doesn't matter. You still have inherent liberties, period. It doesn't say, well, if you commit a felony, you can't have a gun. It says, no, you get to have a gun no matter what. Well, it says, thou shalt not infringe. That means you don't touch the fringe of it. You don't touch the edge of it. Don't come near it. Don't even look at the lettering. Don't come to the edge of the Second Amendment. See, we give up too much, right? Through simple arguments of safety and fear. The same process it takes to get into prison or into jail is the same process they use for you to get on an airplane.
That's true.
You take your shoes off, you take your belt off, you take everything out of your pockets, you show them your ID, and they x-ray you. It's the same thing they do at the county jail.
Oh my God. I just flew, and it was horrible. It's getting worse. Mm-hmm. It's getting worse.
And on the loudspeaker, every 15 to 10 minutes, it says federal law requires you to wear a mask. If you do not wear a mask, you'll be restricted from flying and possibly flying in the future. If you go to the FAA website, it says that there is no federal law for mask wearing, that it is a requirement. It's not a federal law, but over the loudspeaker, they tell you it's federal law. In the airplane, they tell you it's federal law. Do you see how that works, where they get to use words against us? They get to use monuments against us. They get to use, and I know we kind of get off track on some of that, but it's the symbolism in the words. Words have meanings.
They do. And it's nice that we have a choice in a lot of this is from the currency and the people who run the currency. And it's nice that we have a choice.
Right.
Meta one coin.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a whole, yeah. So, okay. So for me, like I said, I started this in high school. I was asking my high school teacher, like, why is this corporation thing? They didn't know. And they were on there for a paycheck. And I don't mean to turn down teachers. We all do a job because we want a paycheck, right? A lot of us really don't do it for our passion. We teach because it's what we can do, right? Or whatever it is. And I'm not failing. I'm not saying they failed as a teacher by teaching us, but they should have known, right? They should have known, because it's their country too. But then I ran into this whole Metacoin and universal law. And I say this kind of flippantly, I just ran into this. It's a journey for me. I just turned 50 this year. And I look 78, but I just turned 50. It's years in the sun right here. Roadmap of America. The idea that it took me 30 some years to get here. But the problem is if I would have ran into you guys 20 years ago, I was too busy with kids. was too busy with life. I was too busy running a business. I was too busy, doing it. And so yeah. And so the idea that I went through all this stuff, and then I came and I met you guys, and this MetaCoin with the gold, the precious metal currency, that in itself is exciting. I don't care about let's just push the freedom part away, right? Let's just over here. Let's move this over. So you're going to tell me I'm going to have something that's literally, I don't have to carry the gold and silver. I don't have to pack that around in my arms all the time, but you're going to give me something that's literally tangible, that is real. All right, sign me up. Now I'm not going to, the CIA backed Bitcoin and all this other stuff. Okay. So I don't have to be a part of the government process where they made trillions of dollars to do their black ops stuff and off the American people and the world, the people of the world. So you're telling me that I could just have something that's truly tangible? Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's do that. Let's that's in its simplest terms. People need to understand that right there is freedom. That your money actually works for you. It doesn't deflate by 3% and doesn't lose another 3% in inflation. It literally just sits there and creates its own value. That right there should blow your mind. The fiat currency that we understand, the US dollar, they lose 3 to 6% in deflation, right? But you also lose another 3 to 6% in inflation. That's up to a 12% swing in devaluation. If you had $100 in your checking account, and at the end of the year, you've lost $12. That's the simplest way to tell you. Oh, no, I still have my $100, Jim. But it doesn't buy what it did last year. And every year it loses that same 6 to 12%, just because it poofs and it's gone. So if you have something that has tangible, that's great. Go ahead.
Oh, that's true. Just think about how far your fiat dollars that lose 12 to 15% every year, how much that's going to benefit your children and their children.
Right.
So
fiat currency is a form of slavery, because it's you can never get off the hamster wheel. Where I was thinking of my, having 20 years of savings, I was having to think of inflationary rates too, right? So I got to figure out how to make money on my money to try to keep it ahead of that. But I don't want to put in the stock market, because I think the stock market's a big scandal, pyramid scheme in the worst way. And so how do I get it? And so, yeah, so I had money in cash. And that was another thing. I had money in cash in my house because I didn't believe in having everything in the bank, right? And they took that too. And then they didn't write it down. So in one raid, they took 40,000, and the other raid, they took 28,000 that I had in the house, and never wrote it down. So, thanks to the PD for that one, right? So how do I go back and prove that? How do I prove that I had that cash? Well, you're just making that up.
exactly.
Well, I can't prove it that they took it, right? Because, well, it's just cash. It's not tangible. Or the fact that they took my guns, and they had no right taking my guns. I wasn't a felon, and I wasn't doing any type of gun crime for what they found in the house. So again, this is these things, right? When I say, oh, they could take my gun because I was doing a gun crime, and in reality, the Second Amendment doesn't even allow them to do that. Sorry, everybody gets real sticky about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does not ever say if you have committed a felony or any type of gun crime, this is taken away. It says you have that right, period, full stop. And if we all felt like we had that right and we used it the way it was supposed to be used, a lot of the crimes and things that we do would go away, because we have that certain understanding. Two men in a room actually have the understanding that they could actually get in a fight at any given time, and men will use physical violence. So that's why men tend to get along easier than women, because women don't use, they use words. And
psychological violence.
Right. So men can actually, like, you know what, you go ahead, buddy, we could do this. Right. So there's always that threat. Right. So it actually neutralizes, like two superpowers, right? They both have the same amount of threat possibility. So nothing ever happens. Right. But it's always some third world country over here, North Korea, trying to act like they're big boys in the block. But we don't understand that in the psychological sense. And we like, oh no, we got to take it away from these people. But then when you take something away, now it becomes dirty. Now people want it more. It's like trying to make drugs illegal. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
So,
and also wanted to point out, just taking a step back a little bit, had you already gone through the SPC process and you were a creditor, they would have been required to give that back to you.
Right.
That they couldn't have taken it from you. And the other thing too is the defamation and the same processes, the same tactics that had been placed upon you
Mhm.
telling your truth happened to Meta One, and we're
Right.
still cleaning it up. So that tells you that we're genuine. It's almost like a badge of honor.
It is. And I would like to have a different type of badge. I don't know what that would be, but and well, you look at what they did, General Flynn. I mean, General Flynn, very similar. Look what they did, Roger Stone. Roger Stone, they came in with SWAT team on a, 68-year-old man or however old he is, 78-year-old man. I mean, why would you need to do that? And again, I was not a threat to anybody. And that's the sad part is that, and they wrote articles about me saying some horrible things. And because I had a preacher come to me last week because I was doing this. I'm doing this affidavit thing for the forensic audit. And so I'm using the court of record, not the court of law, not the extension of the British authority, but I'm using the court of record. And people, first of all, a lot of people don't even ask that because they don't even know what it is. They don't even pay attention. But then some people do. And then you have to explain it to them. And they're like, they're having a whole nother mental cramp over that. Right. But the idea that we've allowed ourselves, and I keep going back to this, and then I apologize, but we keep going back and allowing ourselves to be subjugated to things that we shouldn't, and we allow for them to say things about us. But this preacher comes to me and he says, "Hey Jim, this and this and this was said about you." Screenshot, sends it to me. I'm like, "I'm sorry if you don't want to have any contact with me. I understand. These things aren't factual, and if you can't continue on, then I understand." And he's like, "No," he goes, "I'd rather have you in the trenches, a guy who's willing to fight for our country. I'm not worried about what you did in the past." I was like, "Well, I didn't do any of those things, but thank you for your, sticking with me." So through his own testimony, anyway, he was willing to be a freedom fighter and a patriot past whatever it is they thought I was doing. And then again, that was all because the guy who wrote the article was having people in the records department literally copy and paste and send him the judge's notes, the DA's notes, photographs, all my evidence, everything, my intake papers, everything. And so he was getting information that was way privileged and he should never have had. And there was privacy issues all through it. And those people now have been brought up on federal charges. They're facing federal charges right now, but you don't hear about in the newspaper because, well, that was his source. Why would he tell on himself? And so that's what they do. So they should, the idea that they tear you apart should actually make you look at and say, well, that guy's actually probably more dignified than any of these politicians really are. Because at least he's out there doing the right thing where the politicians are lying to you. So
It's reverse think.
Mhm.
It really is.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing the work that you do. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being on this podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. So thank you for letting me go on and on about this stuff. But I hope that it gives some people some hope and some understanding that freedom is real. And what we're doing here with the universal law stuff, with the Metacoin, with all those things, this is so powerful. And this is what you guys, all that little feeling, that little voice inside you that says there's something else out there. Well, that's what this is. And this is where you need to be. So.
And the more people that come together, the more people that understand this,
Mhm.
find each other, create community,
Yeah.
the stronger we'll be.
Oh yeah.
And we can take our power back.
Oh, absolutely. That's the big part of it is when we stand up, we the people. No, here, I'll give you one little bit. It can never be any one leader that stood up and set us free, because then they're the hero, and that hero dies or is killed or whatever, then that movement stops. But if we the people stand up and we bind together and we take the power and move it up, they can never stop that. And that is generations deep of people being affected by that movement. When we understand our own power, it's amazing and it's freeing. The more you understand it, the more momentum inside of you, inside your soul, inside your head, and your speech will get thicker and faster and stronger. And you're like, I am not going back to that cage. You're not putting me back in there. And meeting Robert was a blessing in so many ways for me, because it was kind of like, I was right. I was right the whole time. Look right over here. I told you guys, bet right here, And so, the Metacoin stuff is amazing. It's liberating, because again, the fiat cash, it deflates, and you're always trying to catch up with the deflation, right, of that value. And so,
you don't own it.
Yeah.
You don't own your bank account. You don't own it. You own your wallet. You own your money. It's yours.
Yeah.
And you use it.
Yeah. And it's amazing. It really is. It's in that freedom. That's that freedom where you got that guy who sits in the corner and just doesn't have to say anything. You're just free. You don't have to fight. You don't have, I'm just free. And it's not arrogance. It's just confidence. You're confident that you have that freedom and then liberty. Oh, because you do get to make your own choices. You want a chicken farm? Yeah, you got a chicken farm. You want to fly planes? You're going to fly planes because you could to pursue your own happiness. And that's what we should be doing. And think about how great this world would be if we weren't so worried about chasing that down all the time, right? Oh, the freedom stuff is crazy. It's fun. So I'm looking forward to. I'm on the journey now. I'm in the beginning stages. So this is me at the beginning. I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna look like at the end, but I'm so excited about this. It's like I found out I get to go to an amusement park for my birthday. I mean, that's where I'm at. I just get to find out, right? I haven't experienced it all yet, and so I'm excited about it.
Fantastic. Well, I hope at some point you'll come back on the show.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime. I think it's gonna be great, and I want to share. I want everybody to understand this because it's liberating. Oh man.
Go ahead. You always have so much to say. Go ahead. How can we
That's
find
a good
you?
thing. So much to say. I don't. A kid who was in speech therapy because he wouldn't talk in school. So here's a guy who talks all the time now, right? Okay. So my website is thejimpriceshow.com. Probably the easiest way to find me, thejimpriceshow.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, DLive, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. I'm on all the major platforms, so you can find me out there. But if you go to thejimpriceshow.com, you can scroll down, find Meta One Coin on there. You can find Universal Law on there. It's a great resource, and you can subscribe to my show there. And if I send anything out, you guys get it first. I'm on 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Central every day, and sometimes I run a little longer. And I'm on from 7 to 9 Central on Saturdays. So Sundays I take off. And then next week I will be in August 10th, 11th, and 12th. I'll be in Sioux Falls. I will be media at the Cyber Symposium. So we're going to see how all that comes down because I've been given a preview, and it's pretty exciting stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. It's exciting, but I'm gonna tell you, there's going to be some bang shins. There's going to be some bruises and bumps. There's going to be some black eyes. But understand that we will win. Do not give up. Do not give in. Hold the line. So I always say that, but it'll be good. It's good stuff. So
fantastic.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much.
I hope this podcast was thought-provoking and interesting for you. To learn more about Meta One Coin or join the freedom movement, please visit the website at metaone.io. To learn more about human rights and sovereignty, please visit number 8, Universal Law, number 8.io. Thank you for listening. Please comment, share, or download this episode. We always appreciate hearing from you. And until next time, live freely and live abundantly.